Hello and welcome to the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G, and joining me today is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And today we're going to be taking a look at the latest movie out of Blumhouse Productions studio. It is The Invisible Man, of course. A bit of a modern day retelling of The Invisible Man. Of course, Invisible Man is a story that's been told a few times in cinema, dating right back to the 1930s, and then we've had some comedy versions, and there was Hollow Man and stuff like that, and now we've got this reworking from a man that a lot of people are calling the King of Horror, Leigh Whannell, the man who created universes like Saw, Insidious. This guy has done a lot in horror, and he is at the helm of this movie, The Invisible Man, which sees a woman called Cecilia, played by Elizabeth Moss, trying to escape an abusive relationship that she is in, and she ends up breaking out of the relationship and going and staying with a really good friend of hers called James, played by Aldous Hodge, a detective, and his daughter Sydney, played by Storm Reid. It's while she's there that she gets the news that her partner has actually passed away, and she goes to see his brother Tom, played by Michael Dorman, who is a lawyer who provides her with kind of even a bigger way out because he tells her that she's been left a sum of money. That's when everything starts to get a little bit weird, and she realizes that perhaps her ex-partner, Adrian, played by Oliver Jackson Cohen, isn't really dead, and that he's actually made himself invisible and is stalking her and the people that she is staying with. Oh, mate, I've got to ask, what did you think of The Invisible Man? Because I know neither you or I are very big fans of reworkings or modern retellings, but what did you think of The Invisible Man?
Yeah, I've said multiple times how much I'm kind of against remakes just in general, but it's one of those things where with The Invisible Man, there's been so many, exactly like you just said, there's been so many different takes on the character. Like, of all the Universal monsters, I think The Invisible Man is maybe one of my favorites. There's like so many different takes on it, from horror to comedy, but he's still a character that I don't think has been overdone as much as, say, Frankenstein, and definitely not as much as Dracula. And as far as the Invisible Man story being a horror movie goes, I really like the idea of a character being someone who derives pleasure from causing chaos and suffering, but is in such a state that he faces no repercussions for his actions. That's why I think of the original black and white Universal horror films, that was one of my favorites. But yeah, this movie took that idea and twisted it in a completely different direction, into basically a story of domestic violence and overcoming a PTSD from domestic violence, and it works out a hell of a lot better than really it sounded like it would. I know when I first heard about what the basic story was going to be about, the idea of having an Invisible Man movie, but it was mostly focused on the Invisible Man's wife. It just seemed very weird, like a weird decision to make. But Leigh Whannell, he's done a very good job of making this movie work in something that's kind of original, but still like a modern day monster movie, like that calls back to the original film. What did you think of it, David?
Yeah, I absolutely love this film. I thought it was a brilliant kind of psychological horror thriller, and Leigh Whannell, it turns out, is the perfect guy to make this kind of movie because, like I said before, this is the guy who's made movies like Insidious and Saw. Like, he has just really, really enhanced The Invisible Man here and made the character something truly terrifying, but also brought in a modern day topic like an abusive relationship and kind of enhanced it with The Invisible Man, like being the bad guy. This must be one of those movies where Universal is kind of thinking, what the hell has happened? Like, they try to launch the Dark Universe, the Mummy kind of fails, and then you have Blumhouse Productions teaming up with the guy who created Saw and bringing one of the monsters to life in a movie that is going to do frighteningly well. I don't know how it's going to go at the box office, but I know this movie is already getting critical acclaim. Like, Universal must be thinking, what the hell? Like, we thought this Dark Universe was dead and buried. Like, and it's got to make you wonder now, do they, because Universal have got all of the rights to those different characters, do they now, like, kind of get Blumhouse to, like, kind of try to revive the Dark Universe, or do they leave it at, you know what, these guys teamed up together and made a really, really good Invisible Man movie? Because it kind of makes me wonder now, what would happen if Blumhouse did team up with, like, some other directors like Leigh Whannell and work on a Frankenstein movie or work on a Dracula movie? Like, can they actually create that magic? Because they've done it with a couple of their other, where they've bought into other horror franchises and brought out another version. Like, some of them haven't been great, but they haven't sucked like some of the other ones have either. And it's like, I don't know, like, I'm becoming a really, really big fan of Blumhouse. Like, I've always loved their small kind of indie horrors that they've made. I liked Fantasy Island. I think people that went along and saw that movie and didn't like it, I kind of think that they weren't the kind of people that movie was for. Like, a lot of people I know went and saw it and then came out of it and said that they thought it was cheesy. It's like, but it's deliberate B-grade horror. Like, the director has said he wanted to make a B-grade horror. So if you coming out of that movie and going, oh, it's a little bit cheesy, it's like, well, yeah, that's what B-grade horror is all about. But yeah, I'm becoming a really, really big fan of Blumhouse and what they're doing with these movies at the moment. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of The Invisible Man.
Yeah, like I've really enjoyed the Universal monster movies of the past, and a lot of people were skeptical or even celebrating the failure of Universal's their recent attempt at this Dark Universe thing. I was really disappointed that they didn't go ahead with that. Give it another chance. I know the Mummy movie, it wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be. I think that it is considered a failure of sorts, but I mean, it still made an amount of money that a lot of other movies really wish that they could make themselves.
Yeah.
So I guess I was disappointed they didn't go ahead. They really had big plans with A-list actors to be in new movies like Javier Bardem and Johnny Depp. I know Johnny Depp was originally supposed to be the Invisible Man in the Dark Universe original take of this movie. I think one of the issues that they had with that monster movie cinematic universe is that they tried to do it on a superhero movie scale, like what Ghostbusters 2016, and that was a big mistake. Like, while these movies may have been the Avengers movies of the 30s or whenever they came out, they're not now. What they should have aimed for is something on a much smaller scale. And I remember in our review for Terminator Dark Fate, we were saying that we could see them trying to continue that franchise in a lower budget Blumhouse film kind of way.
Yeah.
And what made me think that personally was how well made and how effective a movie like Upgrade was, which ironically was Leigh Whannell's previous film as director. And now that is the style he's used to approach The Invisible Man, and I think that's great. Like, this really is the kind of level that Universal, these monster movies should be on, not the huge $100 million epic action films that what they were trying to do with huge action Tom Cruise movie. Like, we've had the special effects spectacle that was Hollow Man, and I really liked that movie, and it was great that they went in a different direction here than that. Like, the Mummy film with Tom Cruise, I think what they tried to do with that was just do the same huge big budget thing which worked with the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies of the late 90s. But I think we really needed to see something different this time around, and that's why I think this movie works so well, because they're not. You could see them maybe originally thinking, okay, how can we take The Invisible Man and make it work as $100 million action movie starring Johnny Depp, and that it wouldn't have. Like, I can't see that really working. But this was something actually quite interesting, and it took the concept in a new direction. Which, yeah, I thought that was really really well done of Leigh Whannell.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the low budget aspect of this movie that makes it work so much, because it's done everything in this movie that they didn't do with The Mummy. Like, for starters, they had one director, one screenwriter. It was, yeah, like, and that makes it a passion project straight away, as far as I'm concerned. If you have, like, a screenwriter directing his own work, then it becomes a passion project. He's obviously in love with it. There was not a multitude of screenwriters or anything like that. The movie was made for $7 million, which is, like, just when you consider that it'll probably make that in a couple of hours in America this weekend, like, that is an absolute huge thing. But also, I like the fact that, like all of Blumhouse's movies, they haven't really gone out of their way to go and get big name actors. Like, people know Elizabeth Moss as a television actress. Like,
yeah.
She's in one of the most popular television shows in the world at the moment. That's where she comes from. Oliver Jackson Cohen plays like her abusive boyfriend. It's someone, again, that people don't recognize. For Aussies, Michael Dorman plays the brother. Like, Michael Dorman is one of my favourite Aussie actors. He's been in movies like Acolytes. We've known him since he was a teenager in The Secret Life of Us, and to me, he's one of those kind of underrated actors who always does an amazing job. But even, like, the character of James, like the cop in this, being played by Aldous Hodge, it's not someone that people are going to recognize straight away. And I kind of like that. It always adds to it, and I think one of the things that I really enjoy about that is that it also gives the director and the production company kind of more scope to go out and get the perfect people that they think are perfect for the roles, rather than a studio saying to them, oh, we want to do an Invisible Man movie, but you have to have Tom Cruise playing the Invisible Man. Like, then you've got to write that part with that person in mind. Like, Elizabeth Moss in this film, and, like, people are going to laugh when I say this because it's a genre flick, but she's in Oscar territory with this movie. Like, if this movie was a drama, and this was about a woman trying to escape an abusive relationship, people would be penciling her in for an Oscar nomination. Like, she is brilliant in this movie, and she has to go beyond what you would normally get in a drama, because she's got to do these fight sequences where she's fighting nothing. There's a brilliant scene here where she gets attacked by the Invisible Man in her kitchen, and, like, she's breaking plates on nothing. And just, yeah, that the element of terror that she's in as a character, add that to suddenly having to do these stunts where there's actually nothing that you're fighting, and that to me is the kind of thing that we should be celebrating actors and actresses for, like that kind of performance, because yeah, she does both here. She does physical stuff, but she also does these really dramatic scenes. There's a scene in this movie that, like, you'd expect to come out of a movie like this and get haunted by, like, one of the more graphic scenes, but one of my most haunting scenes in this movie is where she tries to go outside for the first time since she's escaped a relationship with Adrian, and she tries to walk to the mailbox, and she's absolutely terrified. And yeah, like, that is all Elizabeth Moss. Like, yeah, she's been given a great script by Leigh Whannell, and she's been given some brilliant directions, but that is all Elizabeth Moss and her talent in those sequences. And yeah, I just think it's a shame that, like, she's not going to get more recognition for this movie, because I thought she was brilliant in this film.
Yeah, like, it was exactly what you said about the way that with Blumhouse movies, they go about being able to create really interesting movies that actually make actors big by not really focusing on huge name actors within them. This movie was mostly filmed in Australia, and I think they imported only 3 actors.
Yeah.
When Elizabeth Moss, Aldous Hodge, and Storm Reid.
Yep.
And so by that, I mean, we recognize Elizabeth Moss from Mad Men or The Handmaid's Tale and other movies that she's been in, surely. But like Aldous Hodge, I didn't recognize him as he's been in a few movies recently.